We are continuing our study in the Gospel of Matthew. In this section, we are going to look at chapter 2 and verses 13 through 15. I am reading from the Revised Standard Version. Now when they, that is the Magi, departed, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream and said, Rise, take the child and his mother, and flee to Egypt, and remain there till I tell you, for Herod is about to search for the child to destroy him. And Joseph rose and took the child and his mother by night and departed to Egypt, and remained there until the death of Herod. This was to fulfill what the Lord had spoken to the prophet, Out of Egypt I have called my son. Faith and reason in the history of the Christian church have had a very rocky relationship. The theology of Thomas Aquinas in the 13th century was an attempt to reconcile the advances philosophically of his day, which was a rediscovery of the philosophy of Aristotle, with Christian faith. So within Aquinas' theology, simple story, we have the coming together of reason and faith, a synthesis. Now, Thomas Aquinas, if we're not familiar with him, is the most important theologian in the Roman Catholic tradition. While Augustine in some ways is more important, it is the work of Aquinas that becomes the lens by which Augustine, who died in 430, is viewed in the Catholic tradition. Martin Luther, whose dates are from 1484 to 1546, represents the other end of the extreme. Luther had a low view of reason, and in particular, he was reacting against, we could say, the theology of Thomas Aquinas. Clearly, most of us do not debate at the level of church fathers the relationship between faith and reason. Yet if you are to be a believer in Christ, you will in your life have to deal with the relationship of faith and reason, and you will have to deal how they work together. In our passage before us, we have Joseph told to go to Egypt. Now ask yourself, did that seem reasonable? Well, it might, because we have heard the Christmas story so often we don't know any other possibility. Joseph and Mary knew their child was special. They knew he was to be the Messiah. How could he be the Messiah for the Jews if he was in Egypt? Reason would say he needs to grow up in Palestine if he is to be the long-awaited Messiah. Joseph and Mary were from Nazareth. Who would they know in Egypt? Faith is not always a call to that which is reasonable. What Joseph and Mary chose, and we could say had to choose, was to be obedient in faith to what God had called them, whether it was reasonable or not. I am not saying that the Christian faith is irrational. What I'm calling attention to is the limits of reason. One of the things that computers provide for us is the ability to create models of potential scenarios. You give the computer enough information and you can create a legitimate model of what could be. Now, some of this work can be quite effective for understanding where a hurricane might land or what might be the outcome of that hurricane landing. Or a model created in the computer can be used to help design a store to maximize flow and the customer's interaction with displays. There is a problem, though, with modeling with computers, and they are dependent on the programmers. Modeling by computers can be flops at times because of failures of the input of information. In certain cases, the biases of the one who created the model can distort the resulting picture. Or a person may fail to put in certain key data, and that distorts the model. In the worst case, a model created by a computer may simply affirm what one wanted to see. God does not always work in ways that will seem reasonable to us. If we say that Egypt makes no sense at all and say, then I will not go, we would be right. The problem is that we have maybe had bad memories of a neighbor from Egypt and therefore hate all Egyptians. Or it could be I've been in Bethlehem a while and I like it here and I like the schools. When God calls and we say it makes no sense and do not obey, are we really being reasonable? Reason can fail us, for our will might have already decided the issue. Much like that computer, there's already something in there that distorts how we view things. So, yes, the Christian faith is reasonable, but the call of God to go forward by faith may not seem reasonable. So, if he says for us to go to Egypt, we lay aside reason and by faith embrace the call